They thought humanity would kneel forever, broken, silent, defeated. But when their alien king executed millions, one human woman stepped forward, and the galaxy learned how terrifying a single enraged human can be. Stay till the end, and if this story hits your heart, subscribe and comment "Humanity Rises" to join the Legion. They expected humanity to whimper, to break, to fade into irrelevant silence. For years, the Xylar Dominion had crushed every species that dared resist them, believing humans were simply another primitive blossom to be torn from the cosmic garden. But on the day their king broadcast his cruelty to the entire galaxy, something ancient and terrifying woke inside every human heart, a fury older than civilization, older than war, older even than fear itself. It began with a tremor across human space. Every public screen, every hollow unit, every display in every city flickered with the emblem of the Xylar Dominion. No warning. No request. Only the face of the Xylar King, cruel eyes, polished carapace, and a smile that spoke of empires built on bones. His claws curled around a ceremonial spear dripping with fresh blood. And behind him, rows of captured humans, bound, beaten, and held upright only by the chains stabbing through their wrists. He lifted the spear and drove it through the first prisoner. The broadcast didn't skip, didn't blur, didn't censor. It wanted the galaxy to witness. The Xylar King declared that humans were too defiant, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed to exist outside shackles. His words slithered through every translator. A species that refuses submission must learn extinction. Then he executed them. All 5 million prisoners. One after another. Their voices silenced into a brutal montage of agony and fading hope, played like a celebration across the Dominion's worlds. Xylar children cheered. Soldiers roared. Their king raised his spear after every life ended, basking in the fear he believed he had carved into the cosmos. Across human space, silence fell. Not shock. Not confusion. A silence that carried the weight of a storm gathering in the lungs of a world. On Earth, in a war room beneath the crust of the planet, General Eraecho watched the broadcast without blinking. Her face did not twist in horror, nor did she hide her rage. She simply stood motionless, jaw tight, eyes steady. And when the final human died and the feed cut, she didn't speak. She only placed her hand against the screen, where the last victim had reached out in their final breath. That victim was her younger sister, Lena Kale. The world around Arya blurred. Officers muttered apologies, curses, prayers. Some broke into sobs. Others punched walls until their knuckles shattered. Humanity's military command trembled with the pressure of colossal grief colliding with the instinct to retaliate. Arya didn't tremble. She stepped away from the screen as if returning from a graveyard with a promise carved into her bones. For years she had been humanity's finest strategist, a mind forged in planetary defense and asymmetrical warfare. Aliens whispered her name with caution. Humans spoke it with reverence. She was the breaker of sieges, the architect of impossible victories, the woman whose calm presence meant survival. Now, she walked with the silence of a storm deciding where to strike. Admiral Vance approached her, voice shaking. "General Kale, say the word. The fleets will move." "No fleets," Arya replied. The entire command center stared at her. "The Xylar Dominion wants to fear humanity," she continued, her voice steady, cold, refined by grief into purpose. "I will show them something far worse, a human with nothing left to lose." A murmur swept through the officers. Some protested. Others looked relieved, as if they knew the truth already. Fleets were too slow, too visible, too predictable. What the Dominion had done required something precise. Something unforgettable. Something personal. Arya's eyes drifted back to the frozen image of her sister's final moment, blood-stained but unbroken. Lena had faced death without begging, without bowing, without letting the Dominion see fear. Arya whispered, so quietly that only the room's silence made it audible, "I will finish what they started in her." Humanity's council voted within the hour. They activated a protocol not used in the entire history of Earth's interstellar age. A classified directive sealed in black titanium and keyed only to the highest levels of command. Retaliation Protocol 7. A strategy so severe that it had been discussed only in theory, debated in moral chambers, and ultimately locked away as something too devastating to unleash. Except now. Now, the galaxy had watched 5 million humans die in chains. Now, the Xylar King had given humanity no choice but to become the monster they believed us to be. Now, Eraecho, who had once been a guardian of peace, stood ready to become its executioner. A technician approached with a trembling data slate. General authorization codes for the Obsidian Spear. Arya accepted the slate without hesitation. The Obsidian Spear was no ordinary vessel. It was a stealth warship designed by human scientists studying every known alien detection system. It bent light, warped gravimetric fields, and erased its own existence from spacetime signatures. Some called it a ghost ship. Others called it a myth. But the military had always known the truth. It was a weapon built for one person. Arya. She walked through the launch bay as personnel snapped to attention. No speeches. No ceremony. No inspirational words. Just the sound of boots on metal and engines humming like the breath of a predator. Inside every human heart that watched her depart, fury tightened into resolve. Parents held their children closer. Veterans sharpened old blades. Young soldiers whispered oaths to stars that had never heard such darkness before. They didn't want revenge. They wanted justice. And when Arya stepped onto the ramp of the Obsidian Spear, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Humanity stood behind her, billions strong, united through grief and rage and the unbreakable instinct to protect their own. As the warship sealed around her, intelligence channels across the galaxy exploded with panic. Alien species murmured ancient warnings: never provoke a death world species. Never corner a human. Never harm their young. The Xylar King dismissed them all. He never believed that a single human could challenge an empire. He never believed in legends. But legends were carved for moments like this, when a woman with a shattered heart stepped into the void, carrying the wrath of an entire species in the steadiness of her breath. When the Obsidian Spear vanished into the darkness, Arya whispered the words the galaxy would soon remember forever. Xylar King. I'm coming. Whispers of Eraecho spread across the galaxy long before her ship entered Xylar-controlled space. Her name traveled like a shadow carried by terrified voices, like a myth revived by those who had never believed in human resilience. To most alien civilizations, humans were unpredictable anomalies, beings who broke every pattern, survived every environment, adapted faster than evolution should allow. But Arya was something else entirely. She was the exception inside the exception, the unpredictable force inside the unpredictable species. And now she was coming straight for the Xylar King. In the luminous halls of the Polari archives, scholars trembled as they replayed footage of Eraecho's past campaigns. The holoscreens showed her walking through burning cities, not with rage, but with the calm precision of a surgeon removing disease. They watched battles where her strategies turned hopeless losses into victories so impossible that military theorists had labeled them statistical anomalies. They listened to testimony from alien commanders who had faced her and survived only because she allowed them to retreat. She is not a soldier, one Polari historian whispered. She is a storm-wearing human skin. Across the galaxy, the Vurak, an insectoid warrior species, held emergency councils. Their generals, hardened by centuries of war, shifted uneasily as they discussed reports that Eraecho had taken command of the Obsidian Spear. One general trembled so hard his mandibles clattered. If she is coming, he said, then the Xylar King is already dead. He simply has not fallen yet. Even the Karathi, a cold, emotionless synthetic race, registered concern in their logic networks. Their processors ran simulations of the Obsidian Spear infiltrating fortified systems. All outcomes pointed to catastrophic collapse of Xylar structure. Not because of human weapons, but because of human willpower. They calculated a phrase that no machine had spoken before: humanity cannot be deterred. While alien species debated in fear, the Xylar Dominion refused to acknowledge the truth. Their elite council gathered before their king, trying to suppress their terror beneath layers of flattery. She is just one human, they insisted. One ship. One life. The Dominion cannot be threatened by a single organism. But beneath their rehearsed confidence, cracks widened. The Xylar elite knew the stories. They had heard of how humans survived death world environments that annihilated other species. They knew about humans on barren moons who built shelters from wreckage, adapted to toxic atmospheres, and lived long after their life support failed. They had seen humans run toward danger instead of away from it, with a madness that alien psychologists still struggled to define. What frightened them wasn't Aria's ship. It was the reason she had launched it. A species driven by vengeance was terrifying. But a human driven by grief? The Dominion had no protocol for that. Back aboard the Obsidian Spear, Aria studied every surveillance stream the Dominion had ever leaked, every intercepted transmission, every weakness their arrogance had exposed. She didn't waste time on anger. She turned her pain into precision. Her sister's final breath lived behind her eyes like a burning constellation guiding her forward. Her crew consisted only of automated systems and adaptive AIs. No humans, no soldiers, no one else to die. Aria had insisted on it. This mission was hers alone. Humanity had suffered enough losses. She reviewed the ship's capabilities not to admire them, but to understand how to use them with maximum efficiency and minimal destruction. Humans valued life, even alien life. Aria didn't want a genocide. She wanted justice. Her voice remained steel when she spoke to the ship's AI. No civilian should suffer for the crimes of a king. The AI replied with its neutral tone, "Understood, General Kale. Lethality restricted to verified combatants." Across human space, broadcasts of Aria's mission spread like wildfire. Children wore digital badges bearing her name. Veterans saluted her departing silhouette. Families who had lost loved ones whispered prayers that she would succeed, not because they wanted bloodshed, but because they wanted the universe to know one truth. Human lives mattered. Alien species began transmitting encrypted messages to humanity, not threats, but warnings. They feared what the Xylar Dominion had awoken. Some urged Earth to withdraw Aria, terrified that if she succeeded, the balance of power would shatter. Others begged for assistance, fearing the Dominion would retaliate against them when Aria broke their pride. But humans did not answer. They had spoken enough. Words couldn't express what 5 million dead humans felt like. Only action could. Far from human territory, Xylar spies attempted the impossible, infiltrating the Obsidian Spear. They approached in disguised ships, using signal-masking technology stolen from conquered species. They believed they were invisible. Aria watched them the moment they entered range. The Obsidian Spear had already hacked their navigation systems, predicted their path, and locked them in place before their cloaking even activated. Aria listened as their panicked transmissions filled the void with desperate static. "Abort! Abort! They see us! How do they see us?" Aria didn't destroy them. She simply disabled their engines and left them floating, unharmed, to be retrieved by their own people. As she shut down their transmissions, she said one thing: "Go home. This is not your fight." The message spread faster than any weapon. Aria Kale did not kill unless she had to. Her mission wasn't destruction, it was retribution. Rumors about her character grew. Some aliens said she could smell lies. Others said she never forgot a face. Still others whispered that she prayed for her enemies before she ended wars. The galaxy's perception of humans shifted, not from fear, but from awe. Those who had mocked humans now whispered about their strength. Those who had enslaved humans now doubted their chains. And those who served the Xylar King silently wondered why he had ever dared provoke them. Meanwhile, the king sat on his throne of polished obsidian, pretending confidence. But he couldn't silence the anxiety churning beneath his armor. He had underestimated humans before. He had underestimated their endurance, their rebellion, their refusal to bow. But never, not once, had a single human come directly for him. He hissed to his advisors, "She is alone. She cannot touch me. We have an empire behind us." But even he didn't believe it. He didn't understand Aria Kale. He didn't understand humanity. He didn't understand what grief could turn a human into. Aria watched the Xylar capital system finally rise on her ship sensors. She inhaled once, steady and controlled. Her sister's memory echoed in her mind, not as a wound but as a promise. "I'm almost there, Lena," she whispered. Then she lifted her head, eyes sharpening like blades forged in starlight. She didn't need an army. She only needed a reason. And she had 5 million of them. The Xylar Holy System had swallowed countless invaders across its history. Fleets, armadas, stealth ships, even species desperate enough to gamble their extinction on a direct assault. None had returned. Not because of overwhelming firepower, but because the Dominion had constructed a labyrinth of sensor webs, gravitational mines, psionic disruptors, and quantum tripwires that encircled their sacred territory like a cosmic cage. When the obsidian spear approached its edges, Xylar commanders activated every defense protocol they possessed. Warning lights drenched their command bridges in crimson. Thousands of technicians hovered over consoles. Generals barked orders. Priests began chanting. Their king's most precious domain was under threat. Except no one could see the threat. The obsidian spear drifted between detection fields the way a shadow moves between candle flames, felt, feared, but never fully seen. Xylar scanning arrays pulsed across the void, lighting up the darkness with beams that bent around the spear's hull like water flowing around stone. Even when the ship passed directly through a detection net, its signature dissolved into the same pattern as stray cosmic dust. The Xylar Dominion had prepared for every known species. But the spear was built by humans. And humans invented war the moment they invented fire. Inside the ship, Aria Kale moved with steady precision. Every calculation she made sliced through the holy system's defenses like a scalpel through fragile skin. She didn't speak, didn't hesitate, didn't allow a single distraction to pull her from the mission's rhythm. Her sister's memory remained present but silent, a guiding pulse behind every breath. The first wave of Xylar patrol ships detected a statistical anomaly in the sensor grid. Their algorithms flagged gravitational fluctuations too controlled to be natural, too faint to be hostile. Patrol commanders exchanged nervous glances. Nothing in the holy system should move with that level of intentional subtlety. "Investigate," the lead officer ordered. His ship accelerated, just in time for its engines to sputter and die. Sparks exploded from consoles. Pilots clawed at controls. Engineers screamed into comms. "The engines aren't responding, we're locked, something hijacked our core." Seconds later, every ship in the patrol group floated helplessly in silence. Aria had disabled them without firing a single shot. She could have destroyed them easily. But she wasn't there to slaughter soldiers following orders. She was there for the king. The Xylar commanders panicked. They sent reinforcements, fast strike cruisers equipped with advanced targeting matrices. But the moment they entered the area, their targeting systems turned inward, forcing their weapons to shut down before they accidentally fired on their own engines. Aria never revealed herself. She simply rearranged their reality. Xylar High Command scrambled to interpret the chaos. Their advisors argued whether this was sorcery or technology or some hybrid nightmare humans had engineered during their silent years. They had mocked human adaptability for decades, believing it primitive instinct. But now, facing the obsidian spear, they saw adaptability as it truly was. A weapon sharper than any blade. Aria continued deeper into the system, gliding past war satellites and ancient structures built to honor Xylar victories. Their architecture was sharp, ornate, proud, symbols of dominance. But to Aria, they were obstacles. And no obstacle built by tyrants had ever stopped a human driven by justice. As she crossed the threshold into the system's inner ring, Xylar priests activated the psionic veil, an ancestral weapon designed to collapse enemy minds. Living beings who entered its radius felt their thoughts crumble. Entire fleets had dissolved into madness. Aria felt nothing. Human neuroscientists had centuries ago developed countermeasures for psychic warfare, reinforced neural patterns, adaptive synapses, microsecond feedback loops. The veil washed over her mind and shattered against the internal strength she had honed through discipline and grief. Sensors inside Xylar temples cracked. Priests gasped. The veil rejected her as if it had touched something unbreakable. "She is not alive," one priest whispered in terror. "Nothing alive walks through the veil unscathed." But Aria was not unscathed. She simply refused to break. The Xylar king finally realized this was more than an incursion. More than vengeance. More than a retaliation. Aria Kale was a declaration. He ordered his elite fleet into formation, the Obsidian Wall, a defensive force believed to be impenetrable. Hundreds of warships aligned their cannons, forming layers of overlapping fire zones. Their weapons pulsed with lethal energy, powerful enough to vaporize small moons. Aria watched the formation assemble. Then she drifted into the gap between their firing lines, a gap that should not have existed. Except she had calculated it 12 minutes before they even positioned their ships. The fleet opened fire. Blinding pillars of energy tore across the void, illuminating every corner of the system. Xylar commanders roared in triumph. The barrage was overwhelming. Nothing could survive it. But when the light faded, the obsidian spear was gone. The Xylar commanders froze. The ship hadn't been destroyed. It had simply passed through the blind spot created by their own overlapping fire, a blind spot no Xylar strategist had ever noticed. No one thought differently enough to see it. But humans were born thinking in impossible angles. Arya emerged behind the obsidian wall and disabled every engine simultaneously. The entire elite fleet dropped into forced shutdown. Their energy cores flickered out. Their weapons hummed to silence. She broadcast one message across their comms: "Stand down. I will not kill those who did not choose this war." Some Xylar soldiers wept in disbelief. Others panicked. A few whispered prayers to whatever gods humans believed in, begging those gods to show mercy. Arya moved past them toward the final barrier, the king's fortress world. The planet rotated slowly, covered in black towers and golden temples. Its shield shimmered like molten metal. Legends claimed that not even a supernova could breach its defenses. But Arya wasn't a supernova. She was a human with a mission. She activated the spear's resonance array. Human engineers had designed it to neutralize shielding without destabilizing infrastructure, a weapon built with surgical precision. The fortress world's shield flickered once, twice, then shattered in silence, collapsing like a dying star shedding its final layer. Xylar defenders stared in disbelief. This wasn't destruction. It was mastery. As Arya descended toward the surface, she saw crowds gathering: soldiers, civilians, priests, children. None raised weapons. None attacked. Fear and awe rippled through them as they watched her ship cut through the golden sky like a blade of judgment. Her voice carried across their comm networks: "I am here for the king. No one else." The fortress gates trembled. The king's advisors begged him to flee. But he was frozen in horror, finally understanding the truth he had refused to acknowledge. This was not a battle he could win. Not with weapons. Not with armies. Not with empires. Because Arya Kale had not come to conquer the Xylar dominion. She had come to end him. And nothing in the galaxy could stop a human carrying the weight of 5 million souls. Fortress trembled under the weight of a silence so heavy it felt like the end of an era. Xylar nobles huddled behind obsidian pillars, unable to believe that a single human had breached the system they once boasted was impossible to touch. Soldiers, trained from birth to kill without hesitation, clutched their weapons with trembling claws. Even the palace guardians, genetically engineered giants, shifted nervously as the obsidian spear descended toward the courtyard like a judgment carved from starlight. Arya Kale stepped onto Xylar soil with a calmness that felt unnatural to those watching. She didn't raise her weapon. She didn't shout. She simply walked forward, every step hitting the ground with the weight of 5 million silenced voices. The crowd scattered like prey, sensing an apex predator they had never evolved to survive. Nothing about her posture radiated aggression, yet the air around her seemed to vibrate with a pressure that made Xylar hearts pound in their armored chests. For centuries, the Dominion had taught that humans were weak, emotional, illogical, fragile. But nothing about the woman before them matched the lies they had been fed. Arya moved with the certainty of someone who had already accepted whatever fate awaited her, someone who had placed her entire being behind a single unbreakable direction: forward. The palace guardians, towering insectoid behemoths nearly 4 times her height, stepped into her path. Their armor clattered as they activated their shock lances. Their voices hissed through translator units: "Turn back, human. None may approach the throne." Arya stopped. Not from fear, but from courtesy. "Move," she said quietly. The guardians froze. Her tone wasn't threatening, it was simply final. They exchanged glances, their instinctive aggression battling an ancient Deathworlder warning in their DNA. But they had pledged loyalty to a king, and duty forced them to act. They lunged. Arya didn't fire her weapon. She stepped aside with a precision that made the world seem to slow around her. Her movements were efficient, minimal, almost gentle. She grabbed the first guardian's arm and redirected his momentum, not striking him, not harming him, simply using his own force to send him crashing into the courtyard wall. The second thrust his lance, but Arya caught the shaft with her bare hand and twisted. Joints cracked. The weapon clattered to the ground. The giants didn't rise again, not because she had killed them, but because they understood she could have. That realization rippled through the crowd. The Xylar had built their culture on domination. They believed power came only from obliteration. Yet the most terrifying thing they had witnessed today was restraint. Arya resumed walking. Inside the palace, the king's advisors argued in frantic whispers. Some demanded evacuation. Others cried for reinforcements. A few tried to send execution squads to intercept her, but the king silenced them with a violent strike of his throne spear. His mandibles twitched. His pupils contracted to slits. He had never feared anything more in his life. The palace doors opened as Arya approached. Not because the guards invited her inside, but because they backed away from them. They could not bring themselves to block her path. Some dropped to one knee, trembling in confusion. Others clung to ancient traditions, lowering their heads to avoid direct eye contact with someone who carried death with such effortless composure. The hallway leading to the throne room was lined with hollow banners displaying the king's victories. Worlds burned, species enslaved, civilizations reduced to cinders. Arya walked past them like she was moving through a graveyard of lies. Her sister's face flickered at the edges of her memory, not as a cry for vengeance but as a reminder of what had been stolen. Justice, not rage, illuminated Arya's every step. The throne room doors slid open with a thunderous boom. The Xylar king rose from his obsidian throne, armor gleaming, spear humming with deadly energy. He towered over any human, his silhouette vast and monstrous, built to intimidate even the bravest. But Arya Kale didn't slow. He tried to mask his fear with contempt. "Human," he snarled, "you trespass on a sacred world. You dare come before me alone." 5 million of my people stood before you, Arya replied. You didn't spare them either. The king's mandibles clicked. They were rebels. Disorder must be crushed. Empires are built on obedience. Empires built on blood, Arya said softly, end the same way. He lifted his spear and aimed it directly at her heart. Energy crackled from its tip, bright enough to burn the floor beneath it. His voice rose in a roar that echoed through the palace. You think a single human can judge me? I am the ruler of systems. I am the voice of destiny. Arya took one more step. The king recoiled. You're not destiny, she said. You're just another tyrant who believed no one would ever hold you accountable. The king lunged. The room exploded with light. His spear fired a blast capable of disintegrating armored vehicles. But Arya was already moving, slipping between the shockwave and the spear's arc like she had seen the attack before it happened. Her hand clamped around the shaft, stopping the weapon mid-strike. The king's eyes widened in disbelief. Humans weren't supposed to react that fast. But Arya wasn't reacting. She was deciding. She twisted the spear downward. The weapon's energy sputtered. The king staggered. His soldiers watched, frozen, unable to comprehend how easily she controlled the battlefield without drawing a single drop of blood. He created a monster when he murdered her sister. But he summoned something far worse, a protector. The king struck again. Arya dodged. He slammed his claws at her. She sidestepped. He roared and unleashed a surge of energy that vaporized the floor. Arya walked through the smoke untouched. Impossible, he screamed. No, she said. Human. The king charged with blind fury. Arya didn't counter. She didn't strike. She simply guided his momentum into the obsidian pillar behind him. The impact shattered the stone and drove the air from his lungs. He collapsed to the floor. His soldiers didn't move. His advisors didn't breathe. Even the air held still. Arya stood over him, her shadow stretching across his throne, a throne polished with centuries of suffering. You killed my sister, she said. Not because she was a threat, but because you wanted to make an example. The king's voice cracked. Humans don't understand rule, don't understand power. You're right, Arya whispered. We understand something stronger. His mandibles twitched. What? Responsibility. Her hand closed around his spear. Not to use it. To break it. The symbol of his rule shattered in her grip. He stared at her in horror. You can kill me, he rasped. But the Dominion will rise again. Arya shook her head slowly. No, she said. Not after they see what real strength looks like. The king trembled. For the first time in his reign, he understood what it meant to stand before a human who refused to surrender, who refused to break, who refused to let evil shape the future. Arya raised the broken spear. It was time to end what he had begun. The throne room shook as the king collapsed, his crown rolling across the floor like a broken promise. For a long moment, no one moved. The guards who had sworn their lives to him stood frozen, their weapons trembling in their hands. The courtiers stared at the human woman who had just ended the most feared ruler in the quadrant with a single, deliberate strike. Her blade still dripped with the heat of alien blood, but her expression did not change. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't revel in her victory. She simply looked at the fallen tyrant as if she were acknowledging the closing of a chapter that had been inevitable from the moment he chose to spill human blood. Her calm terrified them more than her violence ever could. Whispers spread first like a breeze, then like a storm. They said she fought like a creature born of fire. They said her eyes had glowed with the fury of 1,000 dead soldiers. They said this was not vengeance, this was justice. And though many descriptions were exaggerated by fear, one truth remained solid in every trembling voice. Humanity had sent a woman who did not negotiate with monsters. She ended them. But her mission did not end with the king's death. The real war had been the silence that followed. Because for the first time in the Empire's long, brutal history, the seat of the king was empty. The chain of command shattered. The power structure collapsed into chaos. Outside the palace walls, soldiers panicked, unaware whether they should fight, run, or surrender. And as the confusion spread, the human general walked through the throne room, stepping past officers who dared not stand in her way. Her voice cut through the suffocating tension as she spoke to the remaining commanders. She told them the war was over. Not because she said so, but because their empire had no strength left to continue it. Their ships had been disabled. Their fleets scattered. Their alliances unraveled. Humanity had come not to destroy a civilization but to stop a tyrant, and now that he was gone, what happened next depended entirely on them. Some of the aliens cried out that humanity would enslave them. Others insisted she was lying, that humans were conquerors. Others accused her of planning to wipe their species from history. The general let them speak. She let their fears spill out like a wound that had never been allowed to heal. And when they finally fell silent, she answered with something none of them expected: mercy. She told them humanity would not punish billions for the sins of one king. She told them no child would starve for a crime they did not commit. She told them Earth was not a force of annihilation but a civilization that fought only when forced to. Her words struck harder than any blow because they stripped away the lies the king had told them for years. For the first time, they understood that everything they had feared about humans was propaganda designed to control them. Still, mercy did not mean weakness. She warned them clearly. If they ever again harmed Earth or any world under human protection, there would be no second mercy. They had witnessed what a single human general could do. They did not want to learn what a unified humanity was capable of. As she walked through the palace, soldiers slowly lowered their weapons. Some fell to their knees. Some backed away in awe. Some simply stared, struggling to reconcile the fact that the galaxy's newest superpower looked just like any other human, yet carried herself like she wore the weight of every fallen soldier on her shoulders. She ordered medical teams for the wounded, no matter the species. She secured food distribution lines. She organized communications so civilians could contact their families. She restored order faster than the Empire had fallen apart, not by force but through presence alone. When she stepped outside, the streets were filled with citizens whose faces showed every emotion: fear, desperation, disbelief, hope. They expected vengeance. They expected retribution. Instead, she offered a future. She declared that the Empire would no longer bleed its people for expansion. No more forced conscriptions. No more stolen worlds. No more living in terror of a king who treated life like currency. Her voice echoed through the city as she told them the truth. They were free. The Empire didn't cheer immediately. They weren't ready. Freedom was an unfamiliar shape. But slowly, the silence turned into murmurs. Murmurs into shouts. Shouts into roaring cries of relief that washed over the capital like a tidal wave. They weren't cheering the human general. They were cheering the end of the nightmare they had been born into. And in that moment, she realized something profound. Humans didn't just win wars, they changed worlds. Her ship hovered above the city, its engines purring softly as she boarded. Her soldiers saluted her, but she didn't return the salute with pride. She returned it with gratitude. Because she knew the price they had paid for this victory. She knew the faces, the names, the memories of every human life lost in the lead-up to this mission. She carried them with her always. And she whispered a promise as she stared out at the alien world below. Humanity would never allow itself to be pushed into silence again. As the ship ascended, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Some were warnings from frightened governments. Some were offers of alliances. Some were pleas for protection from species who had been oppressed by the fallen empire. The general listened to them all with the same steady resolve. Humanity wouldn't dominate the galaxy, but it would no longer be a target. It would no longer wait to be attacked. It would stand as a force others thought twice before challenging. Reporters asked her what message she wanted to send to any empire considering a future assault on Earth. She simply said, "If you make war on humanity, be prepared to lose more than you plan to take." When the ship entered warp, she allowed herself a rare moment of quiet. No speeches, no orders, no negotiations. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes after fulfilling a duty that had weighed on her soul for too long. She thought of home, of Earth's oceans, cities, mountains. She thought of the mothers and fathers who could finally sleep knowing the threat was gone. She thought of children who would inherit a safer galaxy. And she thought of the king she had slain, not with triumph, but with certainty that she had done what history demanded. Behind her, the fallen empire began to rebuild itself under new leadership chosen by its people. And across star systems, for the first time, their borders did not expand, they stabilized. Trade reopened. Diplomacy flourished. Peace treaties stretched farther than they ever had. And though no one said it outright, everyone knew why. Because humanity had drawn a line that no tyrant dared to cross again. Generations later, children in alien schools would learn about the day the king fell. They would read about the fearless human general who ended a reign of terror. They would hear stories of how one woman's resolve changed the fate of millions. And they would whisper her name with the same mixture of wonder and respect humans had once reserved for legends. Humanity had retaliated. And the galaxy would never forget it.